how we lead into this conversation is how we lead into this conversation, which is talking about a big birthday.
Yeah. So both of us, I'm your senior.
Yeah. We just discovered
That much more mature.
Yeah, 5 months
That
older
much
than
less hair.
See what happens in 5 months. I'm
I
kind
know.
of concerned.
Exactly. The strong wind and it all goes.
Exactly. No, the turning 50. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that is a moment in time. Well, big birthdays. When I turned 30, it was man, I wish I could turn 30 again, but I remember laying in a bathtub crying.
Really?
Over
30?
turning 30. And I don't know why it was so powerful for me in such a dramatic time in my life, turning 30. But it was probably the grief of losing the 20s. The 20s were gone.
Wow, interesting.
And for me, and we met each other as my journey of losing a business and needing help with my mental state and also more of awareness. I was in a transition of my life, losing a business and then doing something new, and looking for help. Find you on YouTube, Evolution of Dave. I mean, I literally had just named my YouTube channel, which I've done nothing with, Becoming Bobby. And which I was like, man, is he on the same journey as has he figured it out? That's the question I had of you. Have you figured it out?
And isn't that a funny question? We were having this conversation earlier because we see these gurus in inverted commas online, and we make the assumption that they've got it all figured out, but none of them have. They've got some things, just like you and I have got. We've got some things figured out, and we're working towards improving that. But we both see this life as a journey. I personally don't want to have it all figured out. I like the exploration of trying to improve, trying to optimize, trying to figure out some things. So...
But it's, really figuring out what's next, and I think these big birthdays gives us this opportunity to go, all right, I'm about to step into a new doorway. What do I want to carry with me on this journey? What do I want to leave? What bags do I take? What old habits and maybe old mindsets. So, I want to go into this new journey with a different packed suitcase of lessons that I can take along and things I need to leave behind.
Yeah. And I'm a little bit awkward about the whole idea of age and 50, because on the one hand, I want this to be a milestone. So I know I'm contradicting myself now. I want it to be a milestone. In other words, okay, you've got this far, well done. But at the same time, I just don't believe in the construct, the chronological idea of age. So I have this real fight in my mind of what does age really mean? It doesn't mean anything. And you are as, old as you feel, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I'm also mindful that it kind of means something. And so I'm with you when I consider that this is a point in my life that is worth recording and reflecting upon.
Yes.
And looking at the decisions that I've made and posing the question, what decisions am I going to work on? What am I going to, what decisions am I going to make next? So, yeah, I do find all that really interesting. And if nothing else, this whole turning 50 thing can be a reflective process, which then leads on to the conversations that you and I have had and coming up with this whole 8 decisions.
Yeah, and that is, an exercise that I want to make sure that we verbally tell each other that I acknowledge that I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know how I'm supposed to be,
Mm.
or I'm trying to figure it out. And I think we are developing a model to just explore. I mean, I kind of look at the 8 decisions is almost like we're building a spaceship to go to this far away place. Let's say Mars, right? We're building this spaceship so we can explore. Um, and do I think we'll figure it out? I don't know. And I hope someone listening to this is curious. And I hope what they hear is themselves in our voice so that they can explore themselves and then take a little piece of what we are learning with them, and to also find a group or a tribe or a group of friends that are starting to ask themselves deeper questions about life, about fatherhood, about who you are and who yourself is. I hear the chatter in my mind, and I'm recognizing that's not really me, and who is me, right? And then as I verbally say it out loud for you to hear, what do you hear in how I talk about me? Do you see me in you, in your mind, and the way you look at your life? And am I um, making your mind start to explore more in you?
Mm.
And that's what I hope to do in this conversation, is for us to explore what it could be if we, made different decisions in the next 50, more
Exactly.
intentional decisions about the time we have.
Mm.
And, I look at it like, all right, we have an opportunity to sit in a rocking chair at 50 and look back, right, at the previous years, from the first moment you had playing, to the ups and the downs. In EO, we do a thing, entrepreneur organization, we do a thing called lifelines, which are the highs and lows of different points in our lives. A high could be graduating and you did really well in school, and a low could be something, your girlfriend dumping you for the first time, the first love lost, right? And you can have these different points in time and look at and reflect. And what I've started to realize is the where you have the greatest peaks is when you had the greatest lows before the peak. The thing that just dropped you to your core, to really question your existence and why you do the things that you do, so that you can evolve, and to like almost have this moment in time where you kind of revolt against yourself because you didn't like who you were or was, and you're like, I got to evolve because I don't need to be this person anymore.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think it's about figuring it all out. I think it's about a desire to getting to the end point, whenever that might be, because we don't know, and having as few a list of regrets as is possible. A really powerful thing to think about is the definition of a really bad way of leaving this life would be, as you're taking your last breath, you are then shown the man you could have been. And that, when you really think about that, when you really deeply think about that, surely that should give you enough impetus, desire, inspiration to now make the next 50, if we're lucky, a life more fulfilled towards our desires, and a life with purpose, meaning, one where we're living up to our potential.
Oh, absolutely. And that this kind of came about, this conversation of this new way of potentially being is wrapped around a friend of ours on a trip to Costa Rica referencing the 12 regrets of the dying and reading that aloud to other men in our same age range, our same mindset, where, you know, we did this vision journey in Costa Rica and had an amazing experience in the jungle, in nature, with music, and being around really like-minded people, kind of crafting our vision for the future. And it wasn't until we heard the 12 regrets of the dying, like spoken out loud and really in a meaningful way, in a thought-provoking way, that we were like, whoa, you know, knowing the true gurus of the day are sitting most likely on their last breaths, telling us what their regrets are. Well, who do I listen to? Do I listen to the person on Instagram who is shouting at me on how to be? Or do I listen to the person who's already seen the movie?
Can you remember? I think I know, but can you remember which one of those regrets had that emotional?
Ooh, that's a tough one,
impact?
because there's two that stand out. One is I wish I would have spent more time with the ones I loved, and that's one that is like almost my go-to. But on the flip side, my other one is I wish I lived up to my potential.
Exactly. That's the
And
one I remember you getting emotional
yeah,
about.
and I have this contrast of that, and that's the battle within me of I want to live up to my potential at the end of the day, and I want to do that to inspire.
And who do you want to inspire?
The younger version of me.
And
I think it's to inspire me, you know, because I think you get inspiration through helping others, and through sharing your life story. You know, this is why we do these conversations, is through the story we get to unpack our own selves. And it's just much like when you were to go or sit down in front of a therapist, right? You're just talking. They're not doing all the talking. You're doing the talking. You're providing your own therapy, right? And it helps you unlock what's hidden in there, because, and I'm juggling with two people inside. You know, I have the Robert, the business Robert person, father that is full of fears and my own challenges, my own head trash. And inside, deep down, is this all-knowing Bobby person who doesn't have those same fears. You know, I am, you know, the Robert is certainly the Clark Kent of me. You know, Bobby is the Superman of me. And but I've created the Robert character to make myself much smaller in my existence.
to supposedly fit in.
To fit in. And but the answer, the question is absolutely, I want to live up to my potential. What about you?
But also, I think it's when we think of our kids. You know, when we think about they don't learn by what we tell them. They only learn by who we are, how we walk through this life, our actions. You know, when I was saying to you the other day, earlier today, Lockie, my son, who's 8, caught me and he said, "Daddy, you shouldn't be on your phone." And I shouldn't have been on my phone, because at the time we were supposed to be playing Pokemon together. You know, why did I allow myself to get distracted by this? This, you know, in many respects they're amazing tools, but equally they are the devil.
Well, I mean, what a great person to remind you. Yeah, I mean, that is like so powerful when our kids remind us
they teach
of
us all
our
the time.
own awareness. Wow. And you know, they you know, especially yours is in an age being able to be in a state of flow with their
Mm,
play,
mm.
they don't have those same distractions
Exactly.
as we do. We got these, we're trying to earn, we're
Mm,
trying to, build a career,
mm,
we're trying to juggle many different
mm.
things. And certainly, um, he's living in a world where there's not the multiple people. They're starting to grow
Yeah.
inside, but it's not fully formed yet. And so they can see
Mm.
your disconnection.
Well, you've hit upon, I think, a super important point that is totally linked to what the 8 Decisions is about. Is how can we live the life that we're living right now as father, as leader, as the person that brings home the bacon, or what, or partly, it's not always entirely us. How can we do that in a state of flow, so that we're not feeling those feelings you just described of anxiety, stress, fear?
Yeah.
How can we do that? And there is a way of doing it. Part of it is aligning with who we are, isn't it? When we align with who we are, then we're not getting those horrible feelings before the day starts. We're not, I don't think you or I get the Sunday scaries, but a lot of people do. And part of the reason why we don't, and again, we haven't got all this life figured out, but part of the reason why we haven't got the Sunday scaries is because in the main, the jobs that we do, we enjoy.
We should.
Yeah. And so therefore, I think it's only really when you're not aligned to your job that you get the Sunday scaries. It's often when you're working for the man, you're doing a job that doesn't quite suit you, and therefore you live in fear on the Sunday. So that leads on then to how some things you and I have got figured out, but we know there's a whole shed load of others that we're still working on.
Yeah, and what have we figured out? I think what I have figured out, I don't know about you, but what I have figured out is I think I have the source of the problem, right? And for me, the source of the problem is not recognizing that things that are happening for me and not to me. And that has been a really beautiful recognition that I had this year, that everything in my past has happened for me and not to me, not as this happened to me. I lost my business, right? I sold my business, but it wasn't in the condition that I wanted to sell the business, but it has opened up this mind capacity to start discovery of really what I should be doing, right? And as I do this transition into this next 50 years, I want to do it with intention. And I think what I have figured out is that I need to figure it out. Figure how is my optimum of way of living? How do I optimize, number one, energy? And that's really what has crafted the 8 Decision. Is the number one thing is, hey, I need to optimize this energy. And what does it mean to optimize my energy? And it is a discovery process that I'm going to embark on, and I believe you're going to embark on. And it's like, how does Robert find the optimum energy to become Bobby, the all-knowing, the one that leads with his heart, that amazing things can happen, not with leading with the fear that sometimes Robert has, that makes me not live up to my potential, because it's those fears that we fight that keep us from being fully who we could be.
Just to go back on the whole for me to me thing, that's really hit home, actually, and not something that I'd contemplated on enough. Because both you and I have gone through shit. We've gone through tough times. And we were talking about it before, how, I was sort of confidently saying, well, it's good we've gone through those, because they enable us to be more resilient. And so therefore I kind of just had this almost arrogant mindset then of, I've become stronger because of it. So that's good. But there's one experience that I haven't put to bed properly, that I haven't realized um, that I don't need to be the victim of, that I can see it as happening for me because of that experience I have gained.
Mm.
And it was an experience that happened over a 2-year period. And I know what my mind has done. I know my mind has blanked a lot of it because there was high trauma involved. And it was only through an experience of being with a new partner that she had said, you realize that some of that will have left a mark. And I hadn't really accounted for that. And when I accepted that, I don't think then that I was still able to think, oh, okay, now I can see this as all not necessarily a positive experience, but an experience in which I've learned, an experience in which I've gained. And you've just sort of reminded me there that that is something that I can look
Yeah, and
back
we
at.
all have. I mean, I think we have so many scars
Mm,
that we almost it's our mind's way of avoiding pain, right? And by maybe putting it on this imaginary shelf, and as time goes on, we've forgotten
mm,
where we've stored it,
mm,
but it's always there. It's there. And how do we go through, go back and like put a new label on the story,
mm,
a new framework around the story? And and that's why it's so powerful for people to recount stories, of their past,
mm,
or recount a trauma, but also with a different framework, because if I said to you, how were you victimized, Dave,
mm,
over those 2 years? Well, you could wear a hat of telling a victimized
mm,
story that would be awfully sad, and
mm.
and maybe make you feel good,
Mm.
because being a victim is
Yeah,
one of the most addictive drugs there is.
absolutely.
So you can wear that hat of telling story through I am victim,
Mm,
but if you said tell the story with the lessons along the way,
mm,
almost like if you were in every good fairy tale is a moral of the story.
mm,
What good lesson did you learn here in this fairy tale story of you? And we get to tell our own fairy tales, right? And I think we should be telling the truth tale, and that is what we learned, because that's the only thing that really
mm,
ultimately matters. Unless you are still desiring to be victim,
mm,
and you can stay victim
mm.
and stay in that all day long.
Totally.
And for a lot of people, that is the trap.
Mm,
But I don't think at the end of the day you get to your potential.
mm,
At the end of the day, that's what we're talking about: is how do you live up to your potential?
mm,
That means recognize the lesson, and and not go and go, well, all right, where were you wrong, Dave?
mm,
What did you do wrong?
mm,
I don't think that's the purpose of the story, is what you did wrong. I think you did right. I think ultimately, when you stop and think about your life and wearing the lens of everything happened on purpose, you've done everything right. Even when you've done wrong,
mm,
it was right,
mm.
because you would not have gotten to experience that loss
Exactly.
that you needed to. Whenever you think back, Facebook is beautiful, because I can see my ex-girlfriends in Facebook,
Mm,
and I've made the right decision.
mm.
You know what I'm saying? And I say that in a generally good way, because when you deal with love loss, right? It's so powerful, but it's only time is the only healer of a love loss. Is just let the time happen,
Mm,
because then you'll get the lessons, hopefully, and be
mm,
able to recount them.
mm,
So at the end of the day, you and I have spent a great deal of time working together,
mm,
going through this transitional life journey to the next point in time where we move forward. And I'm looking at a moment in time, going, what if we developed a framework to help build our operating system? And you and I have come up with these 8 decisions that we can carry with us on a daily basis is almost as awareness, reminder, is just a point every day we can kind of look at these 8 decisions and just say, all right, where are we, in our journey? What are we going to do? And number one was just optimize our energy.
Mm.
How do one optimize his or her energy? And when you just ask that question, well, your mind can go lots of different places. It could be, how do I get good sleep? How do I have good nutrition? How do I move my body? How do I want to live in my body? How do I want to ache when I get older? Or do I need to move all the time so I can avoid the aches and pains of age?
Yeah, well, this is it. We need to treat our bodies like they're and our mind like they are a Ferrari, and therefore, when you think about that, I don't think I ever really want to own a Ferrari, by the way. But if I did, then I'd very much be aware that it would probably require a lot of tweaking all the time.
Right, of course.
Not in terms of just how it looks.
Well, I mean,
but how it runs.
No, at the end of the day, wouldn't you want to treat your body like a Ferrari? Like
Yeah.
you would put the right fuel in it because
Exactly.
it's an expensive device,
Yeah.
but your body could not be more expensive.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
cannot replace this thing. Like in terms of the value of your body versus the value of a Ferrari, I mean, I don't know what brand you could use that would be more valuable than this being that we
Totally.
are, right? And so we should be actively intentional about how we operate it, and realize that we can't overheat the engine. We can't overdo ourselves. We should not try to, but at the same time, we should also challenge ourselves.
Yeah. And okay, let's continue this analogy of the Ferrari. Let's say you had a Ferrari, but you lived in London, and
20 miles an hour.
It reminds me how silly some people in London are, because a lot of them do, and they just simply drive that car, as you say, 20 miles an hour around London.
Yeah.
You're probably doing more damage to the Ferrari by doing that,
Right.
than not taking it to a racetrack or to the Autobahn and properly giving it, a run. And that's the same as the body, isn't it? And the mind.
Yeah.
But in fact, definitely the body and the mind. If we are couch potatoes, then very quickly at our age, we are going to see a rapid decline in everything.
I don't know, not me, but you maybe.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Sorry, Dave.
Because of the 5 months.
I am not going down that trap at all.
Yeah.
But I do believe, like, if you saw me 10 years ago, I am much more physically fit and healthy than I was 10 years ago.
So at some point you made a decision.
Yes, I made a decision. That was not to drink.
Right.
That was the fundamental, massive, biggest thing I have ever done to improve me.
Were you drinking every day?
Oh, absolutely.
And what was it?
Mostly
Spirits?
wine.
Wine. Interesting.
Yeah. And that is one of the decisions that we have. We have, one was, optimize energy, and two is making the decision to be sober. And the way I kind of look at sobriety, like when I went sober, I never said I am not ever drinking again. I'm just not drinking today. That's an easy decision. And I can just have to make this decision every single day. I make a decision to be sober. And honestly, life was easier when I drank. But not rewarding, because I would always feel like I was not living up to my potential. I felt that in my heart, because through the sober journey for me, I heard the statement that it just blew my socks off, and that is, alcohol steals happiness from tomorrow. And when you hear that and you're like, ooh, wow, that is expensive glass of whatever that drink
Mm.
is to steal happiness from tomorrow.
Mm.
Am I willing to pay? It's not the money.
Mm.
Like they don't charge the value of the costs. They don't charge the cost of alcohol,
Mm.
right? They charge for the alcohol,
Mm.
but they don't tell you the unattended costs that go along
Mm.
with every single drink.
Exactly. And ultimately, you ended up making a decision every day,
Every day.
which would have instilled a discipline every day,
Yeah.
which would have led on to other things
Mm.
because you created that discipline
Well,
by making that decision.
I want to make sure that we talk about this. And I think it's important. It's when we say I decide to be sober today,
Mm.
sobriety goes to lots of different levels.
Mm.
Sobriety against weed
Mm.
and drugs, sobriety against an addiction that maybe you have. You could have an addiction to your social media, and you need sobriety away from that to be fully in this life. And so I worry, I'm just worrying this out loud to you, that people are going to see this program or see this community that we're going to build. And I worry that people are going to go, oh, it's just a big sobriety group,
An AA for
NA,
entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And I don't know, how do we prevent that from being? Or do we lean more into that?
Well, but we raise the questions. So who we want to work with are the people that have already started to question, isn't there more? What else is there? Do I like who I've become? Do I like what I've achieved? Looking back at the last 50 years, could I have done anything different? How do I wish I would have acted in ... scenario? If you're already making those questions, asking yourself those questions, then you are right for the 8 decisions. And as you say, it's not about sobriety. It's about a whole load of different things.
Yeah.
In order to live a more fulfilled life for the next 50 years.
Yeah.
And it's not, by the way, targeted at 50-year-olds. It just happens that you and I are.
That's why I enjoy spending time with younger dudes that are in their 20s trying to figure out things. They look at me thinking that I have it figured out. And I look at them and going, if I knew some of the things that I know now when I was your age, oh, wow, what could be amazing. But yet you need to have this experience. You need to figure this out.
Yeah.
But I do ask the questions that I wish someone asked me when I was young. I try to purposely ask those questions because I wish I had those questions earlier on. But, the sobriety thing, I mean, I hang out with lots of people that drink, and I'm able to hang out with people that are drinking, and I'm perfectly fine with that. What it does help me with a tremendous amount is the ability to see who I once was. And I'm not exactly thrilled about who I once was. So I do have a little angst with that. I don't know. Do you because you decide to be sober a lot?
Yeah.
Right.
But maybe who you once were was deliberate in order for you to be who you are now. And yeah, I mean, in that last statement there around me choosing, I very rarely drink alcohol now, and it's not because I ever really took it to any regular excess, but I did have moments, nights of excess. And when I look back at the person then, I actually had a lot of fun doing it. And people liked me for being this person. The bit that I have not necessarily angst over, but the bit that I'm aware of, and looking back, I can think, okay, then maybe I shouldn't have done that as often as I did, was the whole idea that I wore a mask for other people. So I wore the mask of being this fun, drunken person because other people wanted me to. Therefore, I wasn't comfortable with who I really was. I needed to be this person in order to fit in and for others to find me attractive or to want to be around me. I couldn't, therefore, it's very obvious to me now, wasn't obvious back then, I couldn't, therefore, just simply be me. I obviously had a negative connection with who I was back then. I didn't like who I was. You know, I needed to be this other character that did have a name as well. This other character had a name. People would say to me, are you bringing this person? As if this was a completely separate personality.
Well, you do, you know, for me, it took me a long time to be with me, you know, being sober. It's a transition. And, you know, when I became sober, my business completely took off in a beautiful way. My family improved dramatically. I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, I tell you, if you want a superpower, if you want to find a superpower and you are heavily drinking, that is the superpower. There's no question. If you just solve that one thing, even just to be sober for 2 years, because it takes a long time to even go through the transition of being sober. But, you know, as I've done that transition, in this third thing that is important to bring up, in this third decision that we've added to our list, and that is, I am not my mind. You know, this talk that's going inside of my brain that I can now hear that I am sober, right? Before, I could just have a drink and the mind would go away. That little chatter guy in there would disappear. And that's why you would often drink, is that anxiety, right? The stress, or I don't like this state. Here's a drink. I don't like the way I'm feeling. Here's a drink. Oh, I'm feeling nervous. I'm worried. You know, I'm scared. I'm not relaxed. I'm not social, right? All those things, the reason you use the medicine.
The crutch.
Which is a medicine, if I was able to do it in dosing, would probably be okay. I'm not a dosing kind of person. I'm all in. You know, if I want to, and that was a problem for me. And so as I learned that I have this other talk track that's going in my mind, I'm learning that I'm not my mind. And it's a skill that I want to learn about. It's a skill, I think, that that you're trying to explore as well.
Yeah. So, from my perspective and my journey around this subject of I'm not my mind has definitely come from reading a number of books that talk about that. And I recently came to a point where I was able, I think I described it to you in Costa Rica, I was able, or I am able now, when I become aware of the mind and I'm able to disassociate from it, in other words, say to myself that this is just the mind, I can almost get this weird experience of, it's like I'm sort of coming out of my body and witnessing the mind there. It's always on my left shoulder. I don't know whether that's the id or the ego. I can't remember. There's always one, isn't there? Anyway, and that only happened recently, that I was able to do that. In other words, I'm able to sort of have this weird experience where I can witness and go, oh, there he is. There's the mind. That's not me. That's just the mind. That's the machine.
Right.
And that comes with practice, and the more you do that, I've certainly discovered, the less you are ruled by the mind, the less you are controlled by it. And of course, Eckhart Tolle would describe it as then you're able to, you know, be in the present, which ultimately is what we all want. And what's interesting actually about when I think about the present and being in the present and deciding that I want to be in the present more is that it happens naturally either when we're with our children or when we are totally removed from our typical daily existence and we are experiencing something that might be close to flow. You know, I remember I was in Cambodia and riding motorbikes across the killing fields in Cambodia, and I was definitely in the present. And that wasn't predestined, you know, it wasn't, or rather, it wasn't pre-designed. It wasn't, right, I'm now going to ride this motorbike so I can be in the present. It was through that experience of riding a motorbike in this incredible land with minefields on either side of me that I was absolutely 100% in the present because of that experience. So these present moments will happen naturally under given stimuli. That's when we experience that, we then think, right, I want more of this.
Yeah.
And so therefore, when we have those experiences, do we just wait for that next time when we get that really lucky opportunity to be riding a motorbike across the killing fields of Cambodia? Or do we start to work on daily practice so that we experience the present more often? That would be...
Yeah, and I think the way you can do that is, you know, it doesn't have to be driving through on your motorbike, right? There are times that we have to sometimes can be a little bit of a challenge when we're with our kids, just trying to be focused on playing a game that we may be not that interested in, but we're having to do it, right? But, you know, and I think that's why the driven tend to be drawn to hobbies and activities that would give them that level of focus, where you can't do anything else. If you're climbing a mountain, right, you can't do anything else but other than concentrate because your life depends on it. That's a great way to have awareness, to like put your life in jeopardy a little bit. But you can also have those things lightly in riding a bike. You got to stay focused riding your bike. You know, I used to have this razor that would climb these rocks, and when I would drive that thing, you would have to be extremely focused in the way you drove it. And so it wasn't like I was in this vehicle that was super powerful and daydreaming. No, I was right there. Yeah, I felt it. I heard it because it's a loud engine, and you had to carefully climb these rocks, or you could tip over, and you didn't want to tip over. So, but that's part of why we have on our list of 8 decisions is we're not our mind, but we should be in the present. And you know, a thing that I've been practicing is a little exercise. You know, I often imagine myself 100 in a rocking chair, and then I imagine myself at 49. And then I get so excited. I am 49? Are you freaking kidding me? It makes me super present, makes me super aware. And I'm like, I'm happy the way this is great. Because
what's next?
I would beg to be 49 at 100. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, and so it's all about these perspectives that we want to do in this. And then as we navigate that, I think, you know, why we came up with this other one was, you know, to find our purpose and discover what that is.
Definitely. Yeah. And one of the conversations we had earlier was around this whole idea of purpose. And I think it's really important, I think, for people to be aware that it doesn't have to mean something big. You know, we're not all destined to be out there in the public eye, spouting wise words, inspiring others. So purpose can simply be figuring out how to be most of your time, you know, as in to be without the mechanistic mind, you know, and therefore by being in your real authentic self, inevitably you will then show up as the perfect parent, the perfect business leader, colleague, friend, etc., etc. And so that can simply be your purpose. That could be your purpose, just to be your best self.
And you know,
and that has a huge amount of value.
Oh gosh, well, you know what showed up to me as you're saying this is I feel like I am in my purpose when I'm talking to another dad who is questioning their drinking.
Right. They're struggling. Yeah.
And when I hear that struggle, and the story's often always the same,
Mm.
you know, I drink because I am worried, stressed. It's how I relate to people, it's how I'm social. And I'm like, gosh, yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
that that's me.
Mm.
Hello,
Mm-hmm.
me. I'm just talking to me,
Mm.
like a younger version of
Yeah.
me. And I get, and that's why um, one of our decisions is to help.
Mm.
And how do I help? I don't help by doing anything. I help by telling story,
Mm.
just my story. Here's my story.
Mm.
And some people resonate with that story. And when I've seen people resonate, make change of their lives through that story, that's my purpose.
Mm.
There's no financial gain
Mm.
on that. There's no, it feels way better than than money.
Mm.
You know, it's like, wow,
Mm.
because that's more life for that person.
Yeah. The higher purpose of serving others.
Yeah, they now their kids will see more of them
Mm.
and will get more experience with them. And to me, that is essentially why we're doing this whole thing
Mm.
is we are to help others with their decisions, whatever that may be, so that they can be in their purpose. And maybe that purpose is to help others. Maybe that purpose is to change the world.
Mm.
And if that person has that desire, then I think that's important, and that's part of why I'm in the profession that I am with helping entrepreneurs with how their business runs, because I think the solutions to the world's problems is going to take the energy of driven people
Mm.
that are often caught up in their own business that is inefficiently run. And if it was running efficiently, they would have time to help others, right?
Mm.
And or have time to help their employees that are struggling. You know, um, you know, uh, everyone is also in the struggle.
Mm.
We think as leaders that we are struggling because of the pressure of leadership. There are just as many people around us that may not have the responsibilities of leadership, but just as stressed and mentally drained. Just being son,
Exactly.
mom, dad, all
Totally.
those roles that we play as people.
Mm. Especially when we're not totally aligned with who we are.
Right.
Because a lot of it then is a life lived through force and push rather than flow.
Right.
When we live in flow, life becomes easy.
And finding that flow, I think what's great about this whole exercise of even why sobriety is in the mix sometimes is we need to quiet things down to see what's happening.
Mm.
If we have been muting our lives with drugs or alcohol, not seeing what's happening. There's one of the things I noticed when I became sober is I noticed that signs were on my street I'd never seen before. It took a year to even acknowledge they were there.
Wow.
And I would ask my wife, like, how long has that billboard been there? I just noticed it. And I just noticed it because I was always under influence. If I drank yesterday, I may not have had a drink today, but I'm still under the influence of the energy that was stolen from me from the day before. And so those are the acknowledgement. And you start noticing these things so that you can really live in your potential. And that's I think the whole crafting of these 8 decisions for you and I is this decision to live up to my potential.
Totally. Yeah.
And in all these things, these questions, these 8 decisions are just reminders in us every day that we just kind of reminded to. Are we, it's like that moment when we all experience this daily where you have option A and option B. It happens to us all the time. okay, do I need to do this or do not do that? And the right decision is almost always the hardest one.
Mm.
But it's easy to make the easy decisions, but they are then therefore hard,
Mm.
always.
Mm.
So getting our minds wrapped into the idea of choosing hard in many of those situations. And that's not having meaning that you're taking life through force or having to be forceful, but it's just the awareness that, all right, if I'm going to say I'm living up to my potential, if I'm going to live that way, and I'm faced with this door A, door B, then that's the frame of mind to make the decision.
Mm. I was thinking that for a large part of my life, until I started making decisions, until I had my wake up call, etc., etc., was driven by this really weird mindset that it's okay, that thing is coming. That thing is coming around the corner. In other words, I genuinely believed that something big was coming, that I was going to realize my potential. So what's so silly about that is that for a large part of my life, I waited for this thing to happen. You know, I was because I really did feel like something was coming. I didn't know what it was, and so I would therefore that would be fine for me, because then I would justify in my mind, it's okay that you're doing that job that you dislike, Dave, because this thing is coming. It is. It's definitely coming. I know it's coming. And so, for a large part of my working life, I've just been waiting rather than creating.
Ooh, yeah, wow. So, I think the core of this whole 8 decisions is living up to potential. At the end of the day, all these things add up to that one thing in that moment in time when you're faced with a decision point, door A or door B, or the easy decision or the hard decision. Living in your potential would be the right decision, which is often harder, which is often requires more energy or time to live in that potential, right?
Yeah, but some people might be thinking, okay, but how do I know what my potential is? And I personally think that it's not something that you can go out finding, but through the journey that, in many respects, the 8 decisions takes you on, you will discover your potential. And in the same way that we describe purpose and potential, it doesn't have to be anything grandiose, does it, really? It's whether we are living up to our best selves, our best capabilities.
Yeah, and it's different from every single person. And that's why I hope people who watch this don't think that, we're telling people what to do.
No.
We are exploring ourselves, maybe through the technology, through video, through our stories, through our connecting with friends, or if we speak in front of a group, we're just sharing our story on how we are trying to discover. And if you see yourself in what we say through our story, maybe you explore the idea of these decisions or not. It doesn't matter, right? But and that's just to be your best self, to have the best journey you can. Like if you were given this body, if you're going to be the best you could be, how are you going to be?
That is a really good way of describing it, isn't it? As well, that, and I quite often think about this, that we don't have long. We've been given this opportunity. This is the body we've been given, like it or not. This is the only one we get, and we get to run around this beautiful existence in this body, make use of the brain, make use of our muscles, etc., etc. And I would say probably 99% of the population could be living more to their potential, as in we're always more capable if we really want to be more capable. So so the potential bit can be, are we making the most of what we have? Can't it? As in, are we making the most of what's up here? We know through the studies on neuroplasticity that the brain can keep on growing. It can keep connecting. And this leads me on to, I think that I made a video on this around the association with being 50, that quite often it is, we start making assumptions. I've now reached this point in my life, therefore I can't do this anymore. I'm less capable of doing this anymore. And then this long list of things that we just assume we can't do. And then we keep thinking that way. We're only going to just keep going down.
And that's why, the number one decision is to optimize your energy.
Yeah.
Because if you want to live in your potential, you first got to have a full tank of good energy in you. So when the sun comes up, you receive that beautiful energy of the sun to power you through the day. You're conscious to what you are doing. You're aware that you're not your mind. You are aware that we are in our present, so we can live into our potential, so we can help others with their journey, because it's only helping us when we help others. Because then at the end of the day, we are leaders. And that's who I am. That's who I believe you are. And you know you are. And if you're going to be a leader as father, you have to, we have to be aware.
Yeah. And again, all of these words have different connotations, don't they? And people can make assumptions about these words. Leader. It doesn't have to be that you're leading thousands of people.
No.
A leader can just simply be leading those that are closest to you that are still learning.
Yourself.
Or leading
just
yourself.
Just exactly. You.
Yeah.
And why I want to be a leader? I want to be a leader for my kids. I want them to see a leader, because I know they are leaders too. And I want to be an inspiration for them. So anyway, what a good conversation. If you were watching this and curious about what's next, what are we doing here together? We are going on an 8 decisions journey. And this will look like weekly Zoom calls where we are asking ourselves tough questions with like-minded people who are driven, so you can hear their stories and find your story along the way. And every quarter we get together in a retreat setting for a day, sometimes 2 days, where we go through intentional practices and exercises to plan for our future, map out the next quarter of our lives. What are we hoping to achieve through intentional goal-setting exercises and experience shares?
And it's a 2-year program.
Yeah.
Every quarter we are under the umbrella of one of the 8 decisions.
Correct.
But what's interesting, and what we will inevitably find, and what people joining this program will inevitably find, is that let's say we're on the quarter all about finding our potential, I've decided to live up to my potential. And you'll find that in that part of the program, there will still be elements of, am I optimizing my energy? Am I remaining in the present? All of those sorts of things. So at any point you can join this program. You just must start at the beginning of a quarter.
Yeah. And this is just our way of learning for ourselves.
Yeah, it's purely selfish.
Absolutely.
yeah. But in many respects it is, and as it should be. We want to make these decisions so that we could live our best selves. And if you want to be part of the journey to do that for yourself, brilliant, come and join us. But we're never going to say we've figured it out. We're never going to say do this and only this. We're just going to say this is what we're doing and this is what's really helping us. Now let's talk about our experience of this, and how can we further serve others.
Absolutely. Great talk. Let's get started.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Good work.